Hello, welcome to the Royal Rota, working from home edition yet again. Hi Lizzie, how are you?
Hi, yes, another working from home edition. This is becoming the new norm, isn't it?
Oh, I cannot wait until we're back in the studio. There's always sort of things that you kind of miss. Miss being in the office, I was having a conversation with another royal correspondent from one of the newspapers. We miss standing in a fixed point behind velvet rope, waiting for a member of the royal family to turn up, as much as we hate that at the
I
time.
never thought I would hear you say that, but it's true. I really miss, all the travelling we used to do, all the engagements, seeing people in this. Yeah.
Even if it was, not travelling abroad somewhere fancy, even if it was just going to a different part of the UK for one of their visits. When we went to Blackpool, we've been to Scotland, and we go to Wales. We were at Port Talbot Steelworks not so long ago, and all that's gone. There's no travelling. There's nothing going on apart from us sitting in these various home locations.
I think one of the lovely things about this job is that you do get to meet so many people in different corners of the country and world, and that's just been completely cut off. So,
well, I'm sure the Royals are feeling it as well, because there's been plenty of Zoom meetings. But anyway, thank you for tuning back in. Thank you for continuing to subscribe. Remember, you can get this podcast on YouTube. You can get it on Spotify. You can get it on Apple Podcasts, wherever else you get your podcasts. You can watch us. You can listen to us if you don't like looking at us. But you miss out all the lovely pictures of the Royals that way. But nevertheless, we're here every week, come what may. As long as this lockdown continues, we'll be talking to you. So and long afterwards too. Do you want to do the Royal Rundown, Lizzie? What's happened this week? I can make one prediction. There was a Zoom video of various members of the royal family doing things via Zoom.
There was various Zoom meetings again this week, which we'll go through the main ones. One interesting story was the royal finances that have been hit by coronavirus. I think, like everyone across the world, the royals aren't exempt from what's going on at the moment and the impact being felt by coronavirus. So we can look in detail at some of the finances. Harry and Meghan celebrated their second wedding anniversary. It was
2 years ago. We were all in Windsor. Thank goodness wasn't a lockdown then, because there was not much social distancing going on in Windsor that day.
I know, it was really strange looking back at all the images from that day with the massive, massive crowds. I mean, that's just unthinkable right now. We had a message from Prince Charles urging people to pick for Britain. That's urging people to help with this year's harvest that runs from June into the autumn. Medical detection dogs, which Camilla is patron of, they've launched trials this week to see if they can detect coronavirus. And shout, that's the other thing.
Quite an interesting chat William and Kate had, wasn't it, about mental health and how it's affecting people.
Shout is a text service, anonymous text service that offers 24/7 support, and Kate and William had a video call with some of the volunteers from that this week.
And the interesting thing about the Shout service was it's text based, so it's still able to continue, whereas a lot of face-to-face services to help people with their mental well-being haven't, and that was one of the things that they were saying, that you can still get in touch, and this is unaffected by the lockdown in terms of its ability to operate.
And the only other thing to add at the end of the rundown is the Queen approved a very special knighthood this week, and that is for Captain Tom Moore, who has been raising money for NHS charities.
Much deserved that it was too. So actually, yet again, here we are, plenty of things to talk about in royal world, despite the fact that everyone's stuck at home. I think that the finances thing was a pretty interesting one, wasn't it? There were various figures around, and that the palace were careful to say, look, don't get stuck on this figure that has been reported. There's an £18 million hit. But the bottom line is, we shouldn't really be surprised that the income from tourists visiting Buckingham Palace, Windsor Castle, Palace of Holyrood House, Clarence House, wherever else the Royal Collection Trust gets its income from, well, the tourists aren't there. The palaces are all closed indefinitely to the public, so there's clearly going to be a coronavirus pandemic hit to the finances.
Of course, the palaces, like everything at the moment, is affected. They've had to close. You can't have people gathering anywhere, and you can't have any tourists going to see these palaces and residencies. And last year they had 3.2 million visitors, and that raised more than £72 million for the Royal Collection Trust.
Exactly, and that's a lot of money, isn't it? Yeah, and this is not coming into their coffers now. Do you think, Buckingham Palace, the staterooms that you're allowed to go around, by the way, anyone thinking you can go to Buckingham Palace and see the Queen's, living quarters, think again, because that doesn't happen. You are restricted to the staterooms, but worth seeing, because we were there last year for the Queen Victoria exhibition, weren't we? That was their summer exhibition, and we went round Buckingham Palace for that, and it's a fantastic place to go. I mean, I'd recommend it to anyone. Although the price is quite high. I was looking at the prices in the week, £26.50 per person if you want to get into Buckingham Palace. No wonder it's raising £72 million a year.
But the royal finances are quite complicated. So this is the Royal Collection Trust that's been affected, and they are the people that manage and maintain the royal collection. So this is one of the sort of most
we should be clear when we're saying that the royal finances are being hit. We're not talking about the Queen having to sort of scrabble around to find out where her next meal is coming from, which sadly we should point out it is the case for some people now, having to rely on food banks and things because of coronavirus. Before we make light of that kind of situation, nevertheless, the sovereign grant, which is the key bit of the taxpayer money, that's not changed. That's still something like £85 million a year. And we were interested to find out, Lizzie, and neither of us knew this beforehand, is the sovereign grant, even though it's a percentage of the profits of the Crown estate, it can't go down. It can only stay the same or go up.
Sounds pretty good, doesn't it? Sounds like a very good arrangement they've come to there.
Yeah.
So yeah, in 2020, 2021, the sovereign grant is 85.9 million. So that's
right.
You have 25% of the Crown estate profits.
Yeah, it's normally 15%, isn't it? But it's gone up to 25% to pay for the repairs, renovations, emergency work, whatever it's called, for Buckingham Palace.
Yeah, I think it's the resurfacing.
The resurfacing, the resurfacing kind of sort of underplays quite how serious some of the problems were in Buckingham Palace. It was quite urgent, the work, wasn't it? But I was just quite interesting. I've got here that the steps that the government take when they're working out the how much to give the Queen each year. And step one, you work out the income of the net surplus of the Crown estate, it says, which for last year, by the way, was £343 million. You work out what 25% is of that for the Queen. That came to, as you say, 85 million. And then step three is you work out, well, which was higher? Is it this year's amount, 25%, or was it last year's amount? And the Queen gets the higher of the two. So in other words, if the profits from the Crown estate fall, the Queen gets last year's amount. So as you say, can't go down, going to go up.
Sounds like an ideal arrangement. And she also, of course, gets the income from her private income, which is the Duchy of Lancaster.
Yes, which is always a good quiz question if anyone wants one for Kahoot or however you're doing your quizzes online at the moment, is who is the Duke of Lancaster, ? And the answer is
the Queen.
The Queen.
The Queen.
And there's actually, if you go on the Duchy of Lancaster website, there is something in there that says, why is it the Duke and not the Duchess of Lancaster? But it's all to do with old-fashioned things, that the male title is seen as more senior than the female one.
And that was £21 million last year. So although the Royal Collection Trust has been affected by no visitors, royal finances do have other pots of money.
Yes, there's different pots of money coming in, and of course none of this is related, for example, to the Prince of Wales, who's funded by the Duchy of Cornwall. So what we're talking about here is that the Royal Collection Trust isn't getting less money from visitors because of coronavirus. It is not whether or not the Queen's got enough money to feed herself and her family, but it could mean that some staff working for the Royal Collection Trust will have to face pay freezes, perhaps even, who knows? I mean, Earl Peel, who's the Lord Chamberlain, the most senior officer in Buckingham Palace, wrote this memo to staff, and I thought it was quite interesting, even though it was leaked to the Sun newspaper, Buckingham Palace were quite open about it, unusually so, I thought, that the Earl Peel said, we're facing difficulties just as many organisation companies across the country are facing difficulties.
Yeah, they didn't shy away from the fact that they are facing the same challenges as everyone at the moment, albeit, they obviously have a far, far bigger pot of money than the rest of us, but they are feeling the economic impact of the coronavirus crisis. They were also keen to say that the attention at the moment for the household is ensuring it follows all the guidelines and supporting the national effort, and that the time will come where they can address this when we know sort of what the aftermath
full extent.
looks like.
Yeah, and actually there could be, who knows when they get to reopen these palaces, but there could be a boost for them in terms of if a lot of people in the UK can't go abroad. We had a report on News at 10 last night saying that even though Greece is opening up to tourists, I don't think they'll open up to the UK because of the amount of coronavirus deaths we've had here. So if people can't go to Greece or Spain or Italy like they might do normally, maybe a lot of people will be holidaying in this country, and perhaps when the palaces reopen, they might, hopefully for them, get a spike in revenue.
Yeah, I think, as I said, we went to that exhibition last year, and they do some amazing exhibitions every year, and they do different things. So it is definitely something that people should look at if they're looking for things to do in the UK.
And actually, if anyone's watching on YouTube, maybe this is the time to show you some of the pictures of when we went to the palace last year. So this is what the state rooms look like. Sorry if you're listening to this on a podcast, you can't see this at the moment. But this is what the state rooms look like. There was a Queen Victoria exhibition. And in the main, the ballroom where they have the sort of state banquets and things, they sort of transformed it to what it might look like if there was a grand ball going on in Queen Victoria's time. And they projected images, didn't they, into this sort of glass box in the middle of that fantastic room.
And we should also maybe talk a little bit about the Queen's diary, because there'd been some speculation, hadn't there, that she was going to be away from the public spotlight, no engagements for a couple of years, which we don't think's the case, do we?
No, and also, I mean, I think the Queen will do what she's told, and she's 94 years old now, and therefore has to self-isolate. The other trouble is, as soon as you release the Queen to the public, if you like, what's that going to do? Is going to encourage crowds, and therefore that's why the Queen has literally been locked away in Windsor. Not quite locked away in that sense. She still can do whatever she likes on that fantastic estate in and around the castle. But she will not be seen. But I think Buckingham Palace played down those reports that her diary's been sort of cancelled for 2 years. But like everything,
I don't think they put a definite timestamp on it. Of course, they'll continue to follow advice and take advice on precautions, but I don't think they've said 2 years is a definite timestamp.
Now, I think we should have a look while we talk about Windsor Castle. Let's have a look at some pictures of what happened on the 19th of May, 2018. And for those who know their royal stuff, they will know that the 19th of May 2018 was, Royal Wedding Day. Well done. I thought you might jump in with the answer there.
Sorry,
as you can probably see on my screen, Emily's down here. I don't know whether for you, Liz, you point where Emily is on your screen? Right, well,
okay.
She's there. Where am I for you, Emily?
You're down the bottom.
I'm
and
down,
Lizzie's
right, okay.
next to me.
Over there. Well, as you can see, Emily Nash from Hello Magazine has been kind enough to join us this week, which means I have to do less talking and you can do more. So over to you, Emily.
What do you want me to tell you, Chris?
Tell me where you were on Royal Wedding Day, actually, because 2 years, I mean, to me, it seemed like much longer than 2 years ago and everything that's happened with Harry and Meghan in those 2 years. But you were, as we were, I think, up above the guards' room roof, looking into St George's Chapel.
Yeah, I spent some time up on the ramparts, if you like, which was quite fun because we had a view into the castle and out, and seeing sort of all the crowds gathering outside was really fun. And then I did spend a bit of time locked in what you like to call the cupboard, which was a sort of a makeshift media room just behind the chapel, where we were able to sort of write and
it's like a dark room,
the ceremony itself, on a big screen. So it was fun. I mean, I have fantastic memories of that day. It was a really wonderful atmosphere.
And Lizzie, you put up on your social media this week, was it Twitter or Instagram? I can't remember, but a bit of your video of when Harry and Meghan's carriage appeared through the archway. I've forgotten the name of the archway now, and into St George's Chapel. Yeah,
so we had two studios. We had one on the Long Walk, and then we had one up where Emily's talking about on the guards' room roof, overlooking the chapel, and then you could see the crowds out in the streets of Windsor. And that I love that shot of the carriage coming under the arch and then going up past the chapel and through all the crowds and everyone clapping and waving. And it was a really lovely, special day to be a part of and to cover.
We were lucky with the weather, weren't we? And it was just such a stunning day. And Emily, Lizzie and I were saying a short while ago that there wasn't much social distancing going on with the crowds on that day.
I know, it's incredible to look back on those pictures now, given the situation we're all in now. Makes me feel slightly uncomfortable. But, wonderful memories of happier times, and please God, we'll all be back in that sort of scenario in the not too distant future. But just for the swelling of those crowds from very early in the morning, and the people who've been there for days in anticipation for it, it's hard to imagine now. But it was really very special.
I know, it was quite something to be part of, wasn't it? And we're now like 2 years on, and we were wondering, like they did for Archie's birthday, they did a special video recording to mark his first birthday, and I wondered whether they would do something for their wedding anniversary. But as we found out, Lizzie, the message from Harry and Meghan's office was, we ain't doing anything to mark it. I presume they were slightly worried about they would be open to criticism that they're putting too much focus on themselves at quite a crisis time for the rest of the world.
Yeah, I think we've spoken quite a lot about how much we've heard from Harry and Meghan, probably more than we anticipated, given that when they left as working members of the royal family, they said that they were going to take a few months away and sort of take some time away from the spotlight to regroup. And actually we've heard a fair amount from them. So I don't think I was that surprised that they didn't mark the wedding anniversary publicly. They don't have, their Instagram account is not active anymore. So it would have been they would have had to find a platform to do it. So I think that was probably the right call.
Yeah, without the Instagram account, which they had before, without their website, which is still disused or abandoned, whatever word you want to use, that they've got nowhere to put these images. Whereas last time they used Save the Children, didn't they, for Archie's birthday? But and Emily, you'll know the criticism that they got, at around the time when the whole world was and still is worried about coronavirus, that they seem to be talking about their own relationship with the media.
Yeah, I think the timing of that raised a few eyebrows. But look, they've been through a very big change in their own lives as a couple, as a young family. It's unfortunately coincided with this incredible experience we're all going through at the moment. And I think, perhaps the timing certainly wasn't ideal. I don't think it was intentional, perhaps. Obviously, it came as the court case was about to be heard. But yeah, it's difficult. I think it's taking your point earlier, Lizzie, about the fact that they haven't marked this publicly, the anniversary. I think it's important for them really to differentiate between personal things and things that are connected to their charitable work, because if they are wanting to go away and have a quieter life out of the spotlight, it's very important that they make that, they set those boundaries. So I think that's fairly understandable.
Yeah, and
it's a little different because they, as you said, were using it to highlight Save the Children.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the criticism on social media around that time was, oh, hold on a minute, I thought this couple were going off to have a private life privately, and therefore I think every time they do something public-facing, they do have to sort of have a justification for doing so, don't they?
Absolutely, and I think, they are very aware of that, and I'm sure, there may have been, were we not in the middle of a global pandemic right now, they would probably be very active, putting together Archewell, their new foundation, their new charitable setup, and so we're hearing less from them than we would have otherwise. But I think this is something that we're all having to navigate. It's all uncharted territory. I think we all have to be sensitive to to how we approach doing our jobs at the moment.
And how's lockdown for you? What do you think? I think Lizzie's got a pretty good background. These double doors she's got going through to her sitting room. It looks nice. And I have to say, she tells me she's in a small flat, but I have to say it looks a little bit like one of those double doors you get at Buckingham Palace, with the sort of...
I know. Are you sure you're not secretly locked down at Clarence House there, Lizzie?
Yeah. I've just moved in. I just thought I'd take care of things for them.
See, today I'm channeling my inner William and Kate. I thought I'd get a bit of a white door and a bit of a sort of blank wall, because every time William and Kate do their Zoom calls. You think?
It's the right sort of colour, the background as well.
Well, that's just more green, isn't it? So I thought I'd do a bit of a William and Kate look today. If you haven't seen Emily, because I don't have a kitchen at the moment, I haven't had for about 4 weeks. So I'm going into a different location. Lizzie has the same location every single week when she's at home. I've been going around trying to find a clean corner of the house that hasn't got like half the kitchen stacked up in the corner.
Yeah.
So
I hear you. My house is just basically a sea of Lego and dolls, and you know, so far no one's interrupted to ask me to help them go to the toilet, so we're doing pretty well.
Well, it could happen at any time, and if you do need to do that, that's much more important than doing
it's on a regular basis.
So, I mean, and generally, how's lockdown been treating you?
It's been up and down. We all got very sick at the beginning of lockdown, and thankfully we all got through that. And
Coronavirus sick?
Yes, yeah, which was not great fun, and huge sympathy to anyone who is going through that. And we've been very lucky. But
for going through it, so it's nice to see you back. And
it's taken some recovery, I must say. And so yeah, we sort of started lockdown not brilliantly, but it's got better. It has its challenges. But I think we're all experiencing things we never imagined just back in January, you know, when actually Harry and Meghan leaving the royal family was the biggest news of the year as far as we knew.
Rightly so. Are you missing the office at all?
Do you know what? We've done remarkably well. I think this is our 10th issue that we're putting out entirely from home, and the team are doing so well. We're staying in touch quite a lot. We have conferences every morning. I mean, I miss my colleagues. I miss you guys. We normally get to hang out. I can't imagine when we're next going to be on a royal fixed point.
No, and actually earlier I was saying, Lizzie and I were saying earlier, because I had this conversation with one of our other royal correspondent colleagues, that we're all kind of missing standing behind a velvet rope penned into some fixed point. And Lizzie, we never thought we'd actually say that, because normally we spend hours in these things moaning about the fact we're there.
Yeah, I mean, we're quite used to staying in our designated spot, so in many ways we might be well suited to the new normal, whatever that may be.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, hopefully soon we'll be back seeing the royals, not just in this country, but hopefully in some nice country abroad as well. So
I think we're all used to travelling a fair bit. So it's been interesting to just be in one place for a long time. In many ways, it's been fun.
Do you collect the small bottles of soap that you get from the hotels? Because I've actually made my way through them.
Have a cupboard full.
And normally they build because I get so many of them. But actually, for the first time ever, I'm finally making my way through them.
That is one stockpile that's come in pretty useful over the last few months, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. Lizzie, we were at the Chelsea Flower Show last year, weren't we? And we actually saw Kate's garden the nature garden that she had created. And a bit of a shame this year that not just that we weren't there, but more importantly, the royals weren't there. And they have been pretty much every year since, when did they say that the Queen's grandmother, Queen Mary of Teck, first went in about 1916, wasn't it?
That's right, and I think it was even earlier. I think it was 1913, the first member of the royal family attended, and it's such a mainstay of their calendar. And I personally am really sad because I love going every year. But it's been lovely to see them trying to mark it still this year, even though it's only in a virtual form.
And what way, Lizzie, did they mark it this year? Quite an interesting way.
Yeah, so the Queen is patron, and as Emily said, we would normally see her there every year with other members of the family. And obviously they can't go this year, but the show has gone online. So it's a virtual Chelsea Flower Show this year. And the Queen sent her best wishes in a written message. And she said how pleased she was to hear that they were offering gardening advice and virtual sessions for people. And then they also revealed the favourite plants of various members of the royal family. So
right. Do you want to do that in a quiz? I mean, I haven't got the list in front of me, but I can remember some of them. So who can remember the Queen's favourite plant? No looking at your notes, please. What's the Queen's favourite plant?
Lily of the Valley.
Lily of the Valley. Well done. And the picture that they showed was taken in?
The Buckingham Palace.
Yep, okay, a point each for that. Prince Charles's, no looking down now. Prince Charles's favourite plant?
Delphinium.
Right. He didn't say where they took the picture. I thought it was at Highgrove, because I seem to remember that bit of the garden when we went there on the tour.
His delphiniums at Highgrove are spectacular, and if you ever get a chance to go and visit, you really must do. I'm sure you guys right?
Yeah, no, we went last year to mark some anniversary, I can't remember. They absolutely chucked it down with rain the entire time we were there.
I was there that day as well.
But yeah. But we were all there, weren't we? That's right. And the best thing was the cream tea that we had at the end. But all the pictures that our poor cameraman took in the pouring rain weren't the best. Well, they were great pictures, but slightly ruined by the weather.
Yes, indeed. It's a
2 points. 2
occupational
points
hazard
to
on
this
this
one. Camilla's favourite flower. No looking down at your notes.
Go on, Lizzie.
Alcamellia mollis.
Alcamellia mollis is, I think it's also called lady's mantle, which is a bit more user-friendly.
Yes. Yeah. We shouldn't give away too many secrets, but one of the first emails that we got from one of the palaces had that Alcamellia mollis spelt wrong, so they had to issue a correction. I won't go down the entire list. William and Kate didn't have favourite flowers, did they? And I won't go down to the Duchess of Gloucester, but I will ask you for Edward and Sophie, Earl and Countess of Wessex.
That's azaleas.
Okay, very good. Have we got? Well, I can't remember anymore now. I'm done.
I can't remember anymore. I'm done.
Oh, there was some sweet people. Oh, Princess Anne, actually. No idea what it was. But
Hellebores?
Yeah, but it was in Gatcombe Park, was it? Or
that's right. And I think it's lovely that actually Anne took the photograph herself, as did the Countess of Wessex, Sophie. So
yeah. Okay. Well, anyone watching this on YouTube will see all those pictures because our very clever producers would have put them up as we spoke about them. If you're listening to this as a podcast, then you'll have to imagine how beautiful these flowers are. They are on our social media sites. So if you want to go to those on Instagram at ITV News Royals, you'll see all the pictures. But anyway, if you're watching on YouTube, you would have just seen them.
The other thing we did get to see this week was an unseen photograph of the Duchess of Cambridge in her Back to Nature garden when they were sort of doing all the setup work ahead of the show, which we know she was really involved in. She really enjoyed that project. So they put on the Kensington Palace social media feeds this new unseen photograph.
You know, when we went to that garden last year and they opened it during was it the day before, but the evening that the Queen went and Kate showed the Queen, her mother-in-law, the grandmother-in-law around. And well, I distinctly remember that she was going around checking how tidy it was before the Queen got there. And I think she picked something up off the floor and stuffed it in her handbag or something.
That's exactly what happened, yeah. And then the Queen's first comment when she arrived was, "Oh, it's very tidy."
Yes.
So, you know, it's good to know even if you're a member of the family, you make sure everything's just so for Her Majesty.
Funny, isn't it? You know, they say the Queen thinks the whole country smells of fresh paint sometimes. You just wonder even if Kate was there sort of painting the floor and picking up leaves because the Queen was coming. But sad, really, for everyone. Sad for the RHS who run the Chelsea Flower Show. Sad for anyone who loves gardening, you know, from Alan Titchmarsh down to me and my little garden. I think everyone would have liked the Chelsea Flower Show to have continued this year.
Absolutely, and I think it's great that they are trying to do as much as they have done online, because so many of us are doing more gardening than ever at the moment, because, you know, we're not going out. If we're lucky enough to have a little bit of outside space, it's really helping people through some tough times, and especially in Mental Health Awareness Week, you know, I think it's important to focus on these elements of nature that we have access to when we can.
I bought a reduced price pot of basil in Sainsbury's the other day, and I've stuck that in the garden to see whether I can make it grow. So
you've changed.
Who knows? Lockdown changed me, exactly. I'm now trying to grow a herb garden. Who knew that I'd ever be having a herb garden?
Yeah.
But anyway, my pot of 63p basil is currently still alive.
Oh, I need to do the same, so I might take some tips from you later.
Yeah, okay, I'll send you a picture. Pat, you know what? I might put a picture up at some point, and I'll send you a picture of the basil, let you know how it's going. What about your gardening, Lizzie? You, I mean, apart from your fence that you painted and then it blew down.
Yeah, laboriously painted my fence. It's all right. I'm not very green-fingered though, so I tend to kill more things than I can keep alive. But it's so, like Emily said, it is so lovely having outside space, particularly at the moment in the UK.
If you've got it, yeah. I actually laid some turf as well. I won't bore you with all my gardening things. It absolutely.
I can see a sideline for you here, Chris.
Exactly. If this job fails, I might go into sort of garden landscaping. But anyway, I could also, if I needed a new job, I could also. How about this for a segue? I could pick fruit.
Yes,
good segue.
Did you like that?
I like that.
Very, very good.
And why am I talking about picking fruit?
Because the Prince of Wales is asking people to pick fruit and vegetables. He's got behind a government campaign, Pick for Britain, He gave a video message in which he asked for an army of people to come and harvest crops, essentially, because the people who would regularly do it in this country tend to fly in from overseas. Aren't so many flights at the moment. People are obviously in lockdown all over Europe. And, you know, without people coming forward to help, a lot of these vegetables and fruits are going to go to waste.
And it's worth having a listen to that message, actually, isn't it? Prince Charles, we think, and we'll talk about this afterwards, recorded it in the gardens at Burke Hall, where he and Camilla are spending the lockdown on the Balmoral estate. So let's have a listen to what Prince Charles says we should all do, as he called it, unglamorous work, but you'll be helping the national effort.
At this time of great uncertainty, many of our normal routines and regular patterns of life are being challenged. The food and farming sector is no exception. If we are to harvest British fruit and vegetables this year, we need an army of people to help. Food does not happen by magic. It all begins with our remarkable farmers and growers. If the last few weeks have proved anything, it is that food is precious and valued, and it cannot be taken for granted. This is why that great movement of the Second World War, the Land Army, is being rediscovered in the newly created Pick for Britain campaign. In the coming months, many thousands of people will be needed to bring in the crops. It will be hard graft, but is hugely important if we are to avoid the growing crops going to waste. Harvesting runs until early autumn, and people are needed who are genuinely going to commit. The phrase I've often heard is pickers who are stickers. Now, I do not doubt that the work will be unglamorous and at times challenging, but it is of the utmost importance, and at the height of this global pandemic, you will be making a vital contribution to the national effort. So I can only urge you to pick for Britain.
So we got a good look at the Burke Hall gardens then. The interesting about Burke Hall, it's very private, isn't it? Whereas there are tours of Highgrove, tours of Clarence House. We even us as correspondents sometimes go in and out of these places. No one gets to go to Burke Hall very often. So we had a little sneak peek inside, didn't we?
No, exactly. And much like Balmoral itself, you know, these are private residences owned by the royal family, and it's where they go to have their downtime, you know, because they're so much in the public eye when they're in London in particular. You know, they like to keep these things private, and understandably so.
Lizzie and I, when we went to Balmoral, did try to find Burke Hall, and it's kind of like 5 miles away from the actual castle itself. It's quite some distance, isn't it? We drove for ages. We went up this lane to see if we could get a look at Burke Hall, but no, there were gates and security cameras and all the rest of it. So we basically gave up, didn't we?
It's absolutely beautiful up there. We did one of the safari tours, and the estate is just magnificent. I mean, I'm not surprised they love spending so much time there, and we know that they both, the Prince of Wales and Duchess of Cornwall, love walking, and they've got plenty of room up there to get their steps in.
You can see why he likes it so much. And you know, all those times when they spoke about Prince Charles loved Balmoral, but Diana didn't like it, you can see why it would appeal to a certain type of person and not another type.
I guess it's very, you know, very remote. There's all the space in the world to go off and do the sort of things that he enjoys, like painting, angling.
Yeah.
You know, and he has that closeness to nature, which we know he's such a fan of.
Have you ever been, Emily?
I haven't. No, not onto Balmoral itself.
It's worth a visit, and we actually, Lizzie and I went for that very reason, that we had never been, and because it's plays such a big part, not only in the Queen's life, because she's there for a good chunk of time in August and September, when normally, we spoke about this before you came on, Emily, normally while she's in Balmoral, they open up Buckingham Palace to the staterooms to the public. That's not happening this year. Everything's closed. You know, we'd recommend to anyone to go to these palaces, go on a tour to Highgrove Gardens. I'm not here being a you know, publicity officer for the royal family, but they are definitely worth doing.
Yeah, it does give you a bit of an insight. I think particularly the gardens at Highgrove, I think, show you so much about the Prince of Wales's character. I found them really fascinating. There are all sorts of elements in the gardens that really tell you something about his interests, you know, whether it's the busts of the people who've inspired him, or, you know, the things he's collected from his tours around the world. It's really quite interesting.
My favourite thing was the wild flower meadow. I thought that was absolutely beautiful because it was vast as well, wasn't it? And absolutely stunning. But anyway, can't see any of it right now. So when's your next deadline due, Emily? When do you next go to print?
We go to press again on Friday. So we go to press every Friday.
Right.
Obviously, we're always open online.
So what was on the front page of last week's issue?
We have the Duchess of Cambridge, and in fact we've been lucky enough to get hold of some of the entries to her Hold Still competition, the photography competition that she launched for lockdown.
Which she launched on ITV's this morning. Let's be corporate.
So I can't actually grab them now typically. We've been able to share some examples of the things that she has been asking people to send in, and they revolve around kindness, which is one of the elements that at Hello we've talked a lot about in the last couple of years. We had a Hello Kindness campaign, and I think it's great, that people all over the country can get involved with this, and it gives you something to focus on, looking for positives, looking for moments that document what we're going through right now, and I think certainly our readers are really enjoying hearing about the positive stories that are coming out of this amid all the doom and gloom.
Yeah, and actually I'm looking forward to seeing sort of what those pictures are going to look like. And Lizzie, we spoke, didn't we, when we did the story on our bulletins about the type of picture that she's looking for, and just the grands or the great-grandchildren touching the glass with their great-grandparents. And Kate spoke about how those pictures resonated with her. Yeah,
we interviewed the mum of the children, Victoria Johnson, who had taken her little ones to go and visit their great-grandparents, and it was that really lovely, striking image of them holding their hands up to the glass to say goodbye. And I think that's what the Duchess is looking for, that snapshot, that portrait of Britain across the pandemic, whether that's acts of kindness, anxiety, fears. She really wants to sort of capture the broad range of emotions that people are feeling.
Emily, you better get to work then. You're going to print tomorrow. We're holding you up by contributing to our podcast. So I'm sorry if I've delayed if the publication doesn't make it to the stands.
Blame it on Chris Dip. I always do.
Because their key writer, their royal editor. You're editor, aren't you? Royal editor?
I am, yeah.
Yes, their royal editor was tied up on this. So we appreciate you giving up your time and coming on to talk to us. It's been really nice to see you. So glad that you're better and you recovered. And it's only Zoom, but it almost feels like we could be behind a piece of velvet rope in a fixed point.
Almost. Bring it on. It won't be long, I'm sure.
Bring it on. And while you disappear, we're going to take a quick look at someone who is 100 years old and got a special mention from the Queen this week. And he doesn't need an introduction. That is Captain Tom, or then he became, was it Commodore Tom or something? Anyway, he's now, more importantly, Sir Tom, after he was knighted by the Queen in a sort of early and special mention from Her Majesty for the chap who's raised, what's his total, Lizzie? I haven't even checked his running total, but it was something like 30 million.
The last time I checked, which is on the evening it was announced that he was going to get a knighthood, he was standing at £33 million for NHS charities, which is just staggering.
That's worth a couple of knighthoods, really, isn't it? £33 million by one man for NHS charities. So, funny enough, I was going through my emails last night, and I get one from NBC News, the American broadcaster, and they had a little segment in there of Captain Tom and how he's been knighted. So he's not just a British hero; it's clearly someone well known to most of the world, or at least anyone who's been paying attention to his efforts to raise money.
Yeah, I think he's really captured sort of the hearts of the British public, but it's definitely something that has picked up attention globally. And a lot of the money that he's raised has come in from abroad. So it's an amazing achievement, and that money will be incredibly valuable to the NHS. And
was it in last week's podcast or the week before when we showed you the message that he got from the Queen, the telegram he got from her? So that's a pride of place. I don't know how they're going to do all these knighthoods. Captain Tom might get an invitation to the palace to receive it at some point, but at the moment, just as all the palaces are closed, so are all the investiture ceremonies.
That's right, but hopefully at some point in the not too distant future, she says. It would be lovely to see him go in person and receive his knighthood from the Queen.
All the palaces are closed and the investitures aren't happening. The news isn't closed and this podcast isn't closed, and we'll keep coming with the news every single week. And you can follow us on social media. I'm at Chrisship ITV. You are?
At Lizzie ITV.
And on Instagram, you can get us at ITV News Royals, where you get all the best pictures. Just before we go, I'm just having a look at the video message that Prince Charles has given. Rather poignantly, a book of remembrance is being opened at St Paul's Cathedral this week. And to accompany the opening of that book of remembrance for all those who've lost their lives from coronavirus, which sadly in the UK at the moment is more than 35,000. Prince Charles has released this message to mark the opening of this book of remembrance.
Together with the rest of the world, the people of the United Kingdom have experienced personally and in our community life the shock of sudden change in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. For too many among us, this has brought tragedy and heartbreak. For some, relatives have not been able to be present at the time of their loved ones' passing. For many, the loss of their loved ones has been made all the more agonizingly painful by the necessary restrictions on funerals, on travel and gatherings. For all of us, there has been anxiety in the present as we have wondered what the future will be. People of every faith and of none believe that each human being is unique and precious. We also believe it is essential that we remember. We recall how our lives, individually and together, are shaped by the joys and sorrows of the past, so that we may look forward with hope for the future. This virtual book of remembrance is here to help us remember, not just to recall our loss and sorrow, but also to be thankful for everything good that those we have loved brought into our lives, and all that they have given to others. We give thanks for how our lives have been woven together with theirs, and through this book, you are invited to share their lives with others, so that we and those who follow us can all remember what has been and build together a better and more hopeful future. Peace be with you.
So this virtual book is called Remember Me, and as the Prince of Wales says, it's here to help people remember loved ones that have been lost to coronavirus, and to recall loss, sorrow, but also help people remember sort of the happier times. And I met some families this week who have lost loved ones to coronavirus, and they all have their own different stories and memories, and I think this is a really lovely place where people can go and write those down to be kept.
Yeah, and I mean, it's a rather sad note to end on, really. But these are the times in which we are living. Here in the UK, as we said, more than 35,000 deaths. As Prince Charles said, this book is not just to recall our loss and sorrow, but also to be thankful for everything good that those we have loved brought into our lives. And I think that's a poignant moment to end, a reflective moment to end. Thank you for watching. They are difficult times, and we appreciate every single one of you who tune in each week to listen to the Royal Rota podcast. So both from me and from Lizzie, see you next week.